Ezra Parak Bet. Ve'ela b'nei benina holy mishavi agola, and these are the members of the state, namely of Yehuda, of Judea, who made Aliyah from the captivity of the exile. Asher eglad Nebuchadnezzar melech Bavel leBavel, that Nebuchadnezzar had exiled them to Bavel many decades prior. Vayeshuvu Yerushalayim Yehuda, and these Jews returned to Yerushalayim and to Judah, each li'iro, each man to a city. We're going to see that it's going to list off now the names and the families and the numbers of the various Jews who returned from the exile, and they're returning to their specific cities where they live. They're not returning necessarily to a central location. They're returning to each of their separate cities, which is going to cause difficulty later because the Jews are going to be spread out throughout Yehuda instead of centralizing in one place. Now it lists off the leaders who returned. Asher ba'u im Zerubbabel, they returned with Zerubbabel, Yeshua, Nehemiah, Seraiah, Ra'aliah, Mordechai, Bilshan, Mispar, Bigvai, Rechum, Ba'ana. Mispar, Anshe, Am Yisrael. This is the number of the leaders of Israel who returned. So it starts with the leaders, and it starts with Zerubbabel, who was the descendant from Malchus Beit David, from the Davidic dynasty, who served as the Pasha, as the Jewish governor under the general authority of the Persians. Yeshua, who was the Kohen Gadol, who we're going to learn about in detail, especially from Sefer Zechariah. Nehemiah, who very well might be the same Nehemiah mentioned later on in the book of Nehemiah. Seraiah, who was Ezra's father. Ra'aliah, another name. Mordechai Bilshan, who Chazal identify as Mordechai from the Purim story. And he's called Bilshon from the word Lashon because he was a linguist, because he spoke 70 languages, being that he was a member of the Sanhedrin. Mispar, Bigvai, a name, Rechum, and Ba'ana. Now it lists off all the families who returned, and then it's going to list off people by cities to where they returned. So I'm going to just give you the Roshei Parakim. The family starts off with B'nai Paros in Pasuk Gimel, and goes all the way to Pasuk Chaf Aleph B'nai Beit Lechem. Now it starts listing off people not by families, but by cities to where they returned, together with their numbers, from Pasuk Chaf Aleph all the way to Lamed Hey. Then it lists off the Kohanim who returned from Lamed Vav, all the way to Lamed Tes. Then it lists off the Levim who returned, and it divides the Levim into two groups. The Mishoravim, who were the singers, they were the Bnei Asap, they sang in the Beit HaMikdash, and the Shoarim, who were the gatekeepers, because we know the Levim also were the guards in the Beit HaMikdash, and that goes to Pasuk Mem Bet. Now, moving right along, starting with Pasuk Mem Gimel, it discusses groups who were people of questionable lineage. We first have the Netinim who returned. They are the Bnei Givon, the sons of Givon, who in Sefer Yehoshua tricked Yisrael into making a treaty with them, so therefore they became sort of Jewish, and they served as the water carriers and wood choppers. And likewise, it describes the Bnei Abdei Shlomo, starting with Pasuk Nun Hey, who returned. These are the children of the servants of Shlomo, so they were slaves. They also were quasi-Jews. And then it lists off the number of the Netinim and Bnei Abdei Shlomo. So these were people who were sort of Jewish from Pasuk Mem Gimel to Pasuk Nun Chet. Then it lists off the people who had questionable lineage, meaning that they could not identify Lo Yachlu La'agid Beit Avotam V'Zaram Im Yisrael Heim. They couldn't identify whether they were Jewish. And this goes all the way until the end, until Samach Daled. And it mentioned that these people were first of all kicked out from being Kohanim, and second of all, they weren't able to eat the Kodesh Kodashim. They weren't able to eat from any of the sacrifices. That's from Pasuk Samach Gimel, and then Samach Daled starts to list off the numbers of all the people who returned till Samach Vav, and then we end with the summary. At the end of Samach Chet, it says that the Roshei Avot B'Boam LeBeit Hashem Hashem Yerushalayim, when the heads of the families came to the Beit Hashem, Yitnadvu LeBeit Elokim La'amido Mechono, they gave Nidavot, they gave presents to the Beit HaMikdash, which wasn't built yet, but so that they could establish it. And then it mentioned how much presents, and then it says, last pasuk, Vayeshuvu HaKohanim, the Kohanim returned, V'Alevim and the Levim, that's another group, Umina Am, and from the people they returned, and the Mishorarim, the singers, and the Shorim, the gatekeeper, the Netinim, we saw the Gibeonites return, Ba'aram, B'Kol Yisrael, Ba'aram, everyone returned to their cities. So we see twice that they went back to their cities.